Okay, welcome everybody. This is another episode of the Change Your Life Anyway podcast. And today we're going to be talking about overcoming objections with your marketing. I'm Andrea Stenberg, aka the Baby Boomer Entrepreneur.
And I'm Yvonne McCoy from Adept Coach and Consulting. And I'm a little out of breath because I just made it.
Oh, hello from the UK. Hi, Nikki. So we really are an international blab today because I'm in Canada and Yvonne's in the States. We've got somebody from the UK, so this is perfect.
Yes. So
why don't we just dive right in? Yvonne, why don't we, while we're getting to make sure we're all sort of playing from the same playbook, what do we mean by objections?
Well, usually when you are trying to enroll a client or you're selling something, okay, the part that we always hate in the process is when we say, well, what do you think? Or are you ready to get started? And the person's like, well, I need to think about it a little bit more at the time, or I don't have the money, or I need to talk to my spouse, that kind of thing. And we're like, oh no, I thought we were like a go. And so I want to try to look at objections in a totally different light and show you some ways that you can be much better prepared for them, because you're going to have them. That's what you do. And so the more you practice, the better off you're going to be. And I think, one of the things that is really important is to know that objections are really opportunities, okay? They're really the person's way of finding out some more, or finding out if they really feel comfortable doing business with you. If they weren't interested at all, they would just say no. Okay, they wouldn't bother to come up with an objection. So objections are good things. And there's some really basic ones, and we're going to go over those. But I want you to know that, to take a look at, not that objections are like putting the brakes on, but that objections are the person saying, I'm not sure. I'm interested, but I still have some concerns. What do you think, Andrea?
Yvonne, do you have a headset? Because I'm hearing an echo from you. Anyway.
Sorry.
Well, we'll do our best. Anyway, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The objections are sort of a cue to go a little further. But I do think that if you're getting a lot of objections all the time, and they're the same kind of objections, that maybe it's a sign you need to do a little bit more before you get to that kind of sales pitch, that final closing conversation. Because ideally you should be able to explain, what the benefit is going to be for them to work with you, or whether it's a coach like you, a marketing consultant like me, somebody who makes widgets, whatever it is. You need to be able to identify the value, and if that's not happening, then maybe it's something you need to work a little harder on.
Well, I think that's I kind of just put objections out kind of, I think, the way we mainly think about it. What we want to do is change the way you think about it, because especially if you're doing a service, you want to take a look at your marketing and make sure you're doing relationship marketing. Okay, it's because in terms of marketing, they need to know, like, and trust you. And one of the things about the objections that you've gotten in the past, am I still echoing?
No, it's good.
I turned the volume down. If you're getting the same objections, one of the ways to handle that is to address those objections in your marketing before you even get that person in front of you, because that's that explanation is going to appeal to whatever your niche marketing is. They're going to go, oh, I have that concern. Oh, so they're taking care of this. So I think sometimes we think that our marketing is very factual, but the marketing is partially there to help you to build rapport with your client before they even get to you.
Yeah, and in fact, that's when I'm talking with clients about blogging, often they'll say, well, I have nothing to blog about. My industry is boring or whatever. And say, well, what are the most common questions you get from people before they become a customer? And write a blog post about it. Explain the process, or explain, what this particular part means. Because if people read that and it's something that speaks to them, they go, oh yes, that sounds like me, or that sounds like what I was thinking. It'll make them more likely to pick up the phone and call you, and it'll make that sales conversation easier.
And I think you could also use them in your titles, or, so you could say, are you concerned about such and such? And that really speaks to them. So I think that objections, being aware of the objections that you're getting, learning how to handle them, can make the whole process of enrolling a client or selling a product a lot easier. And just to be clear, traditional selling is more for transactional things. So if you're actually selling a widget, if you're selling a box of soap, you're not going to get but so personal with a person. But if you're selling a service, this is a huge area that you can improve in. So do you want me to talk about, kind of some things about overcoming objections? And then maybe somebody will hop in and we'll get some participation, which we would love to have.
Absolutely.
Before we do that, Andrea, do you want to make sure that you tell everybody about the chat box?
Sure. So if you are on your desktop computer, on the right, there is a chat box. Feel free to if you have a comment, tell us where you're from. If you type /Q in the chat box, it'll pop up a little box that says question, which will kind of wave at Yvonne and I to know that you have a question. To the left of your screen, there is a tell a little bird, which means you can tweet out the blab and invite other people to join us. And if you like what either of us are saying, those little hands at the bottom, they're like little applause buttons, or, sort of like a like on Facebook, but here they're little applause, and you can just click on them and give us some applause, which makes us feel all warm and fuzzy. So that would be great. So objections, going on to how to handle them.
Okay, so the first thing is, you're always going to have objections. And so, the good news is that because you are, you can address them in your marketing, like we said before. So as times change, as your clients change, as the objections change, you need to be aware of that so that you can stay current on what your market wants, and you can address that in your marketing. And the other part to the marketing in terms of relationship marketing is that you really want to give your clients a lot of information. So you may find that your objections are great things to do blog posts on, right? So that you're giving them information and you're saying to them, like when I was doing my weight loss kinds of things, I would say, stuck on a plateau, you don't feel like you're ready to invest in this anymore. You're just fed up and tired. Okay. So then people go, yeah, that's the way I feel. Well, maybe I might be interested in what she's got to say because she knows how I feel. So that would be one of the things to realize, is to expect objections and realize that they're a gold mine in terms of what you can do for your marketing and your blogging.
Now, what about that dreaded price objection? Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly if they're new to sales, having that price conversation at all is kind of uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And then if somebody has an objection to it, it's like, oh my God, that's terrible. So okay. How do you deal with that?
Well, let me just tell you, first of all, there are really only 5 objections. One of the first ones is, I can't afford this, or I don't have money. Another one is, I don't have time, or this is not a good time. Another one is, I need to check with a third party, or, like a spouse or a partner. Another one is, I need to think about it. And the last one is, and I have to tell you, I've never actually heard this one before. The last one is, my inner voice is telling me no, or something in my gut is not right. That kind of unexplained kind of thing. So I'm going to start with the big one, which is the money thing. Okay. And so I have found that one of the first things that you have to do, regardless what anybody's objection is that you have to be welcoming about it. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me see how I can help you with that. Okay. And what I have found in my years of sales is that money is something that people say because it's easy, and it usually is not about the money. It usually is about that they don't feel comfortable, they don't understand the value of your service, and that kind of thing. So what I usually say is, aside from the money, is there anything else that you're concerned with? So I can deal with those issues and get them out of the way before I get to money. And I used to work in the tax business, and people would bring their tax returns in, and they would say, I'm not happy with my tax return. I want my money back. And I would say to them, I'll be happy to give you your money back. But aside from the cost of the return, tell me, why you're unhappy with it. And inevitably, they were unhappy because they felt that the tax preparer, they didn't have faith in the credibility of the person who did the taxes. The person had gotten up and asked a lot of questions. They didn't seem to be comfortable with the software, something like that. So it really wasn't that they wanted their money back. It was really that they weren't comfortable with the product. And so I would always say to them, I'll be happy to give you your money back, but I also want to check the tax return so that you will be happy with it and you'll come back again. So that's, I think that's one of the things you have to say. It usually isn't the money, but that's an easy one to say.
Yeah, and when it comes to the money issue, like I know when we used, my husband and I have a computer store, and back in the days when the computer was $5,000, and that was a big expense. For a lot of people, after your house and your car, that was kind of the biggest expense people would have. And so I always felt like I had to make sure they understood what they were buying, because a lot of people, like RAM and hard drive and monitors, people didn't understand that. So if they understood what they were buying, then they could understand, the price. And you could explain to them, say, well, okay, if you're going to do this, you need this kind of computer, because if you're going to do something else, you need a different kind of computer. And by the time they were ready to, buy, they knew what they were getting and why the price.
Absolutely. And so, part of the questioning is, do you see the value of working with me? Or what do you see as the value of working with me? How are you going to solve this problem that, you've told me that you have? And, I think probably the two most valuable questions to me in terms of overcoming objections is, aside from this, do you have any other concerns? And the other one is, tell me more. So that you can kind of drill down and see what's going on. Now, there may be a time when you have to actually say to the person, is it that you don't have the money, or you just don't have the money for this? I mean, if the person is, doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, then, that's legitimate. The other part too is sometimes people need a little help to figure out how they can put something together. So you might say to them, okay, let's take a look at some, what this is going to help you do. It's going to help you do this faster. It's going to help you have more quality. It's going to help you do yada, yada, yada. What would you not have to do or not have to pay for if you were using the service? Can we kind of take the money from one place and put it someplace else? So just let them know, you kind of need to get their permission to see if they want to work on that with you, if they really want it. But at some point, you have to really decide whether or not the money issue is a true issue. Okay.
Now, when I was preparing for our blab, I was doing some research online, and I came across this one article that I found really interesting, talking about the difference between value and price.
Yes.
Because sometimes people get into that, let's shop around and we'll get the best price. And I came across something interesting, and I don't know if I could actually use this, being the Canadian that I am, but it suggested, first of all, ask, is the lowest price your only consideration in making this purchase? And if the person says no, and then they suggest later on in the conversation, if they're still, saying, but this other person gave me a lower price, to ask, do you think it's reasonable to pay the same price for two levels of quality? What do you think about that?
I think that's good. And I think the other thing is that one of the big things that's happening now, and it's building on what you're saying, and it's taking us a little bit to the side, is that in terms of doing proposals, you should do value-based proposals instead of cost proposals. Many people, when they write a proposal, right, you know, you're going to get 10 widgets of this, you're going to get, you know, they give it a price. But what you really want to be able to say is, this is the value that you're getting. You're going to get a website that is, you know, on all devices, mobile or not. You're going to get, you know, the time that it takes it to download or upload or whatever it does is going to be very short because it'll be tested. Okay. And I think the other part to it is, if you get somebody that decides they want to shop around, I always say, I think, you know, if you feel you need to do that, then you need to make sure that you're getting apples and apples. Okay. Because it's very easy to get a quote from somebody that's not quoting on the exact same thing you're getting. So let's make sure you understand what the service is, and let's make sure that you ask them the right questions. You know, you want to make sure they're going to give you this. You're going to make sure that they give you that. And by a lot of times, by the time you go through all that, you've kind of reviewed your services with them again, right? And you know, and if you know about your industry, you could say, now, included in this package is this particular thing, where for a lot of people this is an add-on that you have to pay additional for. So it builds your credibility because it shows that you know what's going on in the industry as well as your own particular product. And I think time is the same thing, Andrea. Do you ever have people that, you know, that say, I don't have the time, or this is not a good time?
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely a common one. Okay.
So, you know, so the answer to that, it kind of depends on how, I guess, how froggy you want to be, you know, if you want to leap or not. But one of the things is, you know, if you had the time, would this be something you would want to do? Because you want to have kind of an assumptive kind of quality, that's something that's going to help them, that they need. You know, how can I help you? Because a lot of times, especially if it's a service, they may not know. They may think that you know, it's going to take up a lot of time when in fact it doesn't. Okay. If it's something like, when do you think the right time is, and what has to happen before that? I mean, if somebody says to you, I don't want to take a class now because my wife is due next week, that kind of makes sense. It's really about trying to figure out when the right time is to follow up. And if you really want to get, you know, pushy, I guess it's not pushy. It depends on how funny you can be and stuff like that. Is, you know, is you can always say, you know, we all have 24 hours, and so it really is just a matter of what we do with it. And you know, the question is, who has more time, a rich man or a poor man? And it's so funny. Many people say the poor man, and you know, the answer is that we all have 24 hours. It's what you do with it and how you get things done. And so, you know, if this is going to be something that's going to help them make their time more effective and efficient and stuff like that, that's a way to do that. The next one is, I need to check with a third party spouse or business partner. And I want you to know that doesn't have to be the kiss of death, that they're interested enough that they want to share it. But here's the downside to that you have to be careful about, is many times the person they're going to share it with, the person doesn't know enough about it to share it with somebody else. Okay? So, you know, the first question is, that I always ask, if it were only you, would you be ready to start working? If there was nobody else in the equation, would you be ready to start working? Because if you haven't persuaded them, or they're not totally comfortable, there's no way that they can bring somebody else on board, because they don't know all the answers. They don't know what it is. The other way to do that is to say, if they say yes, say, if we were going to work together, what would that other person need to know to understand what we're doing and be on board with what we're doing? Okay. So, you know, a lot of times it's if it's a spouse, it may be, well, I've spent money on things like this before and then I've never used it, you know, or if it's a business partner, they may say, you know, this is not a priority or whatever. So, you know, to work through some of the objections that they think that the third party is going to have will help prepare it. Now, the other thing you can always do is say, would you like me to talk to the third party with you? Okay, and that way you can, you know, because they didn't hear what you heard, or they didn't see what you saw. Okay, So I think that that's always something if people are not sure. Is there somebody you want me to talk to for you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and depending on sort of your industry and who you're working with, sometimes the I have to talk to somebody else is really just code for I'm too polite to tell you to go take a hike.
Right.
But one thing I know, my husband used to sell insurance, and one of the things he did before he booked appointments would always ask, like, does your husband need to be part of this conversation, yes, or does your wife need to be part of this conversation? Likewise, if you're bidding or putting a proposal together for a larger organization, even before you get to that sales conversation, is to ask the question, who else needs to be involved in making the decision, and try to get them into the meeting rather than going through your whole pitch and then find out, no, well, there's like 3 other people that have to help make the decision.
I want to go back to what you said about your husband saying who else needs to be there. And again, I think that's part of the relationship marketing thing, in that you're saying you're building rapport with that person before you even get in front of them, and you're saying to him, it's okay to have another person. I would like that. I'm glad if the other person is coming, because this involves both of you. And I think that is put somebody a lot at ease, as opposed to saying, after hearing everything, and then you have to say, well, I think I need to talk to my spouse. It's much nicer to say, we would really like to have your spouse here because we want them involved in the decision-making process, because there may be some ideas that they have that we're not even thinking about. So I think, again, that goes back to the relationship and giving that person a chance to know, like, and trust you. And if in fact the spouse can't come, one of the things that you might want to do is make sure that you prepare some kind of material that might address what the spouse's concerns are. Okay. And that way, when they do have to go back and talk to them, you have started that preparation, or they can say to their spouse, they want you to come. If you can't come, do you have questions that you want to have answered? Okay.
Yeah.
I need to think about it. Okay. And so here's my favorite question. Tell me more. What information can I help you with? What did you like most about what we already discussed? What have you tried before? Why do you think, you're not happy with that? Would be another thing. What would be the reward if you actually move forward? Okay. I think those are important things to take a look at, because when they tell you that they need to think about it, it really means that they're giving it some thought, so that there is, a good possibility that they want to work with you. And I think that's a good thing. So it's about probing a little bit more to see what it is they're thinking about, to see what's going on. And a lot of times I think one of the faults that we have is when we talk about our industry or our services, sometimes we tend to get into industry speak, and people
Yes.
don't know what we're talking about, And so if you've accidentally done that, and the person needs to think about it because they don't know what, I don't know. I may have used the word coaching session, right? And they're not totally clear maybe I wasn't clear that the coaching session happens twice a month. It's on the phone. It's, at their convenience of, they don't have to travel for it. That there's some work that they have to do to get ready for it. They're not really sure what's going to happen. And so that's a really important thing to really probe and find out where they're not feeling as comfortable in the conversation, and what you need to talk about. And I think, because we're talking about objections in the arena of sales, part of what you're doing is, or should have done in the enrollment or the sales process, is kind of paint the picture of what it would be, how great it would be to work with you, to use your program, to have your product, that kind of stuff. And, help them to establish that there's a gap between that and where they are. And so, when you're finished, you want them to say, basically, I need this. I need you, right? So that's reward, is that, I'm going to get all these great things if I work with you. So, Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah. Now, one of the things I was thinking about is it also sort of depends on the price of whatever it is you're selling, and whether or not you need to have more than one sales conversation with somebody. Because I think bigger ticket items, I mean, I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion on this, but I think bigger ticket items, maybe you have to have more conversations, because people aren't necessarily going to, jump if it's like $10,000, $15,000 versus, if it's $500 or $100. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that in terms of a business, some studies have showed that if you have three options for a person, right? You kind of have a basic, a medium, and the premier package, which is a lot more than the medium. I'm trying to remember the percentages, but it's something like, a couple of people take the basic package, a couple of people take the really big package, and most people take the middle package. So I think part of it has to do with giving people options so they can feel comfortable and they can see what they get in everything, in each package. I think the other thing is what we're talking about is your marketing funnel. So you may not actually have actual conversations, but they've read your blog, they've seen your, they've listened to you on Blog Talk Radio, they've been on a blab, so that's kind of, it's not a one-on-one conversation, but that's kind of an icebreaker. They know enough about you to at least be interested. So that by the time that you've actually, they actually contact you, you have had probably several points of contact with them. I mean, you're not going to walk up to somebody in the street and say, hey, do you want to, buy my service? You may not have the conversation, it may not be a one-to-one conversation, but you have had some kind of contact with them and they know about you. So I think, I think what you're saying is that the more points of contact that you have before you actually get to the conversation about, do you want to buy this? And each time you have contact, that's where it builds up the know, like, and trust, your credibility, and your visibility. And you know what? The other thing is, there are a lot of people that say that sell from the stage. They get up, they give a talk, they're a presenter. They have credibility because that organization asked them to come talk, right? They have visibility, so you have a chance to kind of see what they're talking about and get to know them and stuff like that. And, they sell a big package from the stage.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I think you have to be bold. You have to be bolder, Yeah.
And one of the things that I had to struggle with in sales is to be a little bit more confident. It's not like, oh, please buy from me, but it's this is what I'm offering. This is what it's going to do for you. And this is the investment. And then shut up and let don't try to jump in and fill every space. Let them have something to say.
Silence is a wonderful thing in this conversation. You say, tell me more, and then you just wait, and don't be the first one to jump in. Don't rescue them. Right. The last one is, and guys, I really want you to jump in if you, type a question or actually come to an open seat, the last one is, my inner voice is telling me no, or, my gut is telling me no. And so the issue is, what other ways have you tried to solve this? How else do you think you can solve this? And what's the cost of doing nothing? Which I think is a very powerful question, because I think we think that if we do nothing, we stay the same, but actually you don't. By doing nothing is a choice. It's kind of the opposite of doing something. And so having that conversation, I think, is a good one. I mean, I always know the first time I heard that question, I had to go, what is the cost of doing nothing? How far behind am I going to be, or what is it? What's going to happen? So
I think if somebody is saying to you, my gut is telling me no, I think that's a sign that you haven't developed that relationship, that know, like, and trust. And that's probably a good sign for you that you said you've never had anybody give you that objection. So that probably means you're doing it well in building up to having that conversation. Because if somebody has a gut feeling that it's just not right, I think you've dropped the ball somewhere in either establishing the relationship or establishing the value of what you have to offer. That's kind of how I see that particular objection.
Well, thank you. I didn't think about it that way. I think it's also important to really, to dig into what their real reason is, because that's how you can resolve their uncertainty, which is what the objection is. Okay, so we talked about this before, that they don't know, like, or trust you yet. And so that's why it's so important to address this in your marketing material, so that you can get, a leg up on this before you actually send them. So if you're sending them useful information, if you're including testimonials about the results that other people got, then that's a good way to do that. Also,
yeah.
If they don't believe one of the good things about the testimonials is it addresses the issue that your service will help them. So if you can give specific examples, or your testimonials give specific examples.
Yeah, and I think
that's
where
thing.
Social media and things like this blab are really valuable, because it gives people a chance to get a taste of what you're like to work with without them having to put any skin in the game, because, they can read your blog, they can see what you post on Facebook, they can watch us on this blab. I mean, people have the option of jumping on and joining the conversation, but if they're shy or they just don't want to do it, they can still get a taste of what we're like as business people. And I think it's all these touches is really what's so important in leading up to that sales conversation.
The other thing that may sound really strange is that they may not know what they really want. And they may not know, if they do know, they may not be committed enough to follow through. So this is really about helping the client step out of their comfort zone. One of the things that I have found, I heard one of my coaches say once, is it's really hard for you to sell a product that costs more than you've ever paid for a product. So if you want to sell a $2,995 product and you've only paid $500 for a product, then you feel uncomfortable. And so, the same thing is true with your client, is that they may not know what they want. And so it's important for you to help them to see, to really figure out what it is that they want or that they need. And if your service can be kind of customized to that, and to make sure that they're willing to make a clear commitment. I mean, I know, we're in a time when so much is going on, and we're trying to be, such good people, such good parents, such good spouses, such good employees, and all that kind of stuff, that sometimes we don't take the time to say, well, what do I need? Okay. And if it takes time away from somebody else in your family, you can feel somewhat guilty about that. And I think the real thing is that it's important to know that as you become a better person, you become a better mother, a better father, a better provider, those kinds of things. And so people have to be willing to believe in themselves enough to acknowledge that the results that they would get, they deserve it, okay, and that it's going to help them in their life
particularly
overall.
For women, that is the big hurdle, is we're so busy looking after everybody else that it's hard to take the time to look after ourselves. And because there's so many pots on the stove that we're stirring, and we can forget about our own.
Well, it can also be, that situation, like, do I want to buy this higher price thing? I think I need it. I think I want it, but everybody needs shoes or something. So it always gets knocked to the bottom of the list. There are actually two other things I think that you should know about objections. First, you want to make sure that you look at objections as an opportunity to transform them into opportunities. So the way that you do that with the person is to make sure that you make them feel comfortable that they've asked questions or that they have this objection. And like I said, the big question I like is tell me more. I'm glad you asked. Tell me more about that. Tell me what you're concerned about. Acknowledge what their concern is. This is a real old school, but it works if it fits the situation. That is feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I felt that way too. This is what I found. Okay, so that gives you kind of a way to handle it. If the person says it's a lot of money, you could say, hey, I know how you feel. I felt that way too when I had to buy, whatever and stuff. This is what I found, that if I did my homework and I really felt, had confidence in the person and the service, that in the end, I was very happy that I did it. And I found that I got what I paid for.
What do you think about, particularly for somebody who's new in sales, in having some kind of a script to follow when you're having that sales conversation?
I actually think it's a good thing. Okay. The reason I think it's a good thing is because, one, I think that there are certain things that you need to make sure that you touch on. And it's really easy to kind of go all over the place. All right. So I think one of the things that's important is this person is coming to you because you're the expert. And so you need to kind of control the conversation or the interaction to show that, in fact, you are in charge. In charge might not be the right word, but you're in control, I guess. Also, it gives you a chance to get better at it because, you're kind of practicing. And I don't mean that you should necessarily read it word for word, but I think there's certain things that you need to make sure that you tick off, that you've done, okay? Let's say in the enrollment process. And so as you go along, you can get better at that, and you know what things work and you know what things don't work, so that you can evaluate what your process is. When I did this and I skipped this step, nobody ever signs up. When I have it in, maybe only 50% sign up, but that's still better than
And I think
0,
when I started
right?
following a script, and like you said, I don't read it word for word, but knowing the sort of the steps to go from, starting the conversation to getting to the asking for the sale, it gave me more confidence just in having the conversation. Like, it was, I wasn't worried, okay, what do I say next? What do I do? I was like, I knew what I was supposed to say, so I could be more confident, more present. And I think it made it easier for people to buy from me because they felt like I had confidence in my product and service. Whereas before, I may have had confidence in my service, but I didn't have confidence in how to present it. And that comes across too.
Well, I think one of the things that's important is very early in the conversation, to say to the person, I'm here to help you get your needs met. And hopefully that'll mean us working together, and we'll figure that out by the time we get to the end. So when it isn't like you never mention this and you get to the end and you've ambushed them, And like I said, I think it's really easy to go off script. I mean, I have a thing that I use when I'm talking to potential clients, and I try really hard to go through all the steps. But I do know that sometimes I get really excited and get sidetracked. And I think that one of the things is you never want to overpromise, and sometimes that can happen when you get excited. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver than to overpromise and underdeliver. So I think a script is a good thing. I think it makes sure that you've touched on all the certain things. There may be certain phrases that you have to say in your industry. So for instance, if you're in the wellness industry, you want to, you can't say this is going to cure your such and such. You can say things like, I've had clients that have seen improvement in this. And so you want to make sure that, legally you're saying the right things that you need to say. You want to, and again, as much information as you can give them before the conversation, testimonials, those kinds of things are going to help you as you go through that script. Because you can say, did you have a chance to read this? Did you get a chance to see this? if they didn't, you say, well, let me tell you about this because I think you'd be interested. And a script is just kind of an outline, and you can tailor it to meet whatever clients you've got or whatever the situation is. So yes, I think a script is a good thing. I don't believe you should read it word for word, but I do think you should have boxes that you're checking off. I covered this. I covered this.
Yeah, and then I think you're right. The more you do, the more the sales conversation you have, the easier it's going to become.
Absolutely, absolutely. But when all else fails, in terms of handling objections, I'll say to people, would you use this if it were free?
Yeah.
Right? Do you see any value in this at all? Would you do this if it were free? If the answer is no, then you obviously don't have a sale. I mean, if they wouldn't take it for nothing, they're certainly not going to pay for it. The other thing that you could say is, would you like me to talk with you, give you some more information? I want you to be comfortable. If you've had enough, and that's fine. Tell me what I can do. Tell me what you need. Okay, and so that might be. It might be that they want you to follow up. I've had people say, I never make a decision in under I need 48 hours because I bought stuff before. Which is a good time to say,
yeah.
I felt found. I know how you feel. When would you like me to call you back? And feel free to contact me sooner than that if you want to. Okay. And so I think that's most of how you handle objections. I think the biggest thing is to know that objections are opportunities because people are thinking about what you've said to them enough to have a conversation with you to have an objection. A lot of objections can be overcome in your marketing. Like, it's really funny. I just did this product for wellness, so I'm kind of on a wellness kick. But we were talking about how important it was, if you were like a masseuse, how important it is to have some contact with the person before they actually show up to get their massage. Because otherwise you're basically coming in front of a stranger and taking your clothes off. Which is a little uncomfortable. So just sending them something saying, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Be sure to let, I'm interested to know what you want me to work on, such and such and such, and to do a follow-up phone call after it's over or whatever, so that you've established some rapport, because I'm sure one of the great things about relationship marketing, okay, and when you work with someone, okay, is that they're going to tell friends, and this is going to bring you referral clients, right? It's also going to keep your client with you longer. And it costs more to get a new client than it does to keep a client happy. And the more you work with them, and get to whatever it is that they need, the chances are that they're going to tell other people. So I think that is an important thing to keep in mind as well.
I agree. So we're getting on to the end of our podcast. Did you have any final advice or suggestions for people about objections?
Don't be afraid. And aside from that, do you have any other concerns? I think that's $1 million question, because I think that really helps you get to the hard part.
Okay. Well, this has been a great conversation. I think it's an important conversation, particularly for people who aren't very experienced in sales, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. So this was great. Yvonne, where can people find more about you if they want to learn more?
Okay, they can go to Yvonne McCoy, YVONNE McCoy, MCCOY.com. Yeah, that's my website.
And I'm at thebabyboomerentrepreneur.com, and I apologize for making you spell entrepreneur. But I'll put a link in the comments. And thank you, everybody who's joined us, and we'll see you again next week.
Yes, and if you've got questions, be sure to send them to us so we can put them in a future
All right.
lab.
Have a good day, everyone.